The wind howled across the frozen expanse, carrying shards of ice that stung like needles. Snow blanketed the Arizona territory, turning the rugged landscape into a silent, unforgiving wilderness. Bare trees stood like skeletons, their branches creaking under the weight of frost. No bird sang. No animal stirred. The world felt empty, save for the cold that seeped into everything. Tala stumbled through the snow, her breath ragged, each step a battle against the numbness creeping up her legs. Her feet, wrapped in tattered cloth, left faint smears of blood on the white ground. The thin cotton dress she wore, meant for summer's heat, clung to her skin, torn at the shoulder and hem, offering no protection against the biting wind. Her body trembled, not just from cold, but from hunger that gnawed at her insides like a living thing. 3 days without food, for without proper shelter. She was a shadow of the woman she'd been, her strength fading with each mile. Her people, the Apache, had cast her out. A single act, accepting a blanket from a white trader, had branded her a traitor. Her uncle's voice still echoed in her mind, calling her a disgrace. The elders had agreed, their eyes cold as they banished her from the tribe. "You've shamed us," they said. "You don't belong." She hadn't argued. She walked away, head high, into the mountains. Now, with the cold stealing her breath and her vision blurring, she wondered if pride would be her death. Tala knocked on the 7th door that day, a weather cabin on the outskirts of Salt Creek. Her knuckles barely made a sound against the wood. She leaned against the frame, her dark hair matted with snow, her lips cracked and bleeding. The door opened, revealing a man with a graying beard and tired eyes. He looked at her, then at the blood on her feet, and shook his head. "No," he said, shutting the door. The silence that followed was heavier than the wind. She turned away, limping across the snow-covered yard. The sun was sinking behind the mountains, and night would bring a cold she might not survive. Her legs gave out in a ditch, and she fell to her knees, breath hitching. She forced herself up, driven by a stubborn spark she refused to let die. Then she saw it, smoke curling above the pines, faint but steady, rising from a cabin tucked deep in the forest. No fence, no cleared path, just a single trail of boot prints in the snow. She followed it. The cabin was small, rough-hewn, with a slanted roof and a chimney puffing gray smoke. Tala climbed the porch, gripping the post to steady herself. Her hand shook as she knocked, the sound weak against the wind. She knocked again, then pressed her forehead to the doorframe, fighting to stay upright. The door opened slowly. The man who stood there was tall, lean, with a weathered face and blue eyes that seemed to see through her. Mid-40s, maybe, with a slight limp favoring his left leg. His coat was dusted with snow, his hand resting lightly on the door. Tala's voice cracked as she spoke. "Please," she said, "don't let me die out here." She swallowed, shame burning her throat. "I could be a good wife to you." The words felt like a betrayal of herself, but survival demanded them. She had nothing else to offer. The man's eyes moved over her torn dress, her frostbitten feet, the desperation in her face. But he didn't leer. He didn't speak. He stepped back and held the door open. Inside, the cabin was warm, smelling of wood smoke and pine. A fire glowed in a cast-iron stove. Tools and traps hung near the door, a rifle propped against a workbench. One cot, one chair, one table. Simple, sparse, lived in. Tala stood by the stove, her hands trembling as they warmed. Her knees buckled, and he steadied her with a hand on her elbow, then stepped back. He handed her a wool blanket, thick and heavy, and she wrapped it around herself, sinking to the floor. He ladled stew from a pot on the stove, greasy, hot, with chunks of meat, and set the tin bowl beside her. She drank it slowly, the heat burning her hands, grease dripping down her chin. She didn't care. He sat across from her, not too close, watching without staring. When she finished, he brought another blanket and pointed to the cot. "Sleep," he said, his voice low and rough, the first word he'd spoken. Tala hesitated, then lay down, curling on her side, back to him. The fire crackled. The wind screamed outside. She didn't know his name, didn't know why he'd let her in. But he hadn't touched her, hadn't asked for anything. Her eyes stung, and she buried her face in the blanket, breathing deeply for the first time in days. When Tala woke, the cabin was dim, lit only by the stove's faint glow. The cold pressed against the walls, but the room held its warmth. Her body ached, her feet throbbed, but she felt alive. She sat up, the blanket slipping to her waist. Across the room, the man sat in a chair, head tilted back, eyes half closed. His coat and boots were still on, the rifle within reach. He hadn't slept deeply, she could tell. She studied him in the low light. His face was lined, not just by age, but by something heavier, grief, maybe, or years of solitude. His right leg stretched out stiffly, the limb explained. Tala unwrapped the bloody rags from her feet, wincing as the claw stuck to her skin. The pain was sharp, but she stayed quiet. He stirred, eyes opening, locking on her. She froze, then resumed cleaning her feet, blood smearing on the blanket. He stood, slow and deliberate, and crossed to a shelf. From a wooden box, he pulled a tin of salve and a roll of linen, setting them beside her. "I'll hurt you if I do it," he said, voice like gravel. "You do it." Tala nodded, taking the supplies. He'd given her control, a small act that felt like a gift. She worked the salve into her frostbitten toes, biting her lip against the sting. He sat back in his chair, sipping from a tin cup, whiskey by the smell, and picked up a carving knife and a block of wood. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was steady, shared. "You live here alone?" she asked, her voice hoarse. He nodded. "You got a name?" He paused, knife still. "Calder Ridge." She nodded. "Tala." His eyes flicked to her, then back to his carving. She lay back on the cot, the warmth of the stove pulling her toward sleep. The wood in his hands was taking shape. Not a tool, not a weapon, but something small, curved. A comb, maybe. She didn't ask. Her eyes closed and the world faded. Morning came with pale light, filtering through the frosted window. The fire had dwindled, but Tala rose and added wood, striking flint until the flames caught. Calder was gone, his chair empty, his boots and rifle missing. For a moment, panic gripped her, but through the window, she saw him moving through the snow, a rabbit slung over his shoulder. His limp slowed him, but his steps were sure. When he returned, she had water boiling. He dropped the rabbit on the table and began skinning it, his hands precise. "You hungry?" he asked, not looking up. "Yes." "Give me a few." They ate in silence. Seared rabbit wrapped in cloth. Tala washed the dishes afterward, her hands shaking in the cold water. Calder watched, not with judgment, but with something else, curiosity, maybe. "You got anyone looking for you?" he asked. She dried her hands. "No family. Not anymore." He nodded, waiting. "They cast me out," she said. "I took a blanket from a trader. My uncle said I was trouble. The elders agreed." Calder's jaw tightened, but he stayed quiet. "Why'd you let me in?" she asked. He leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. "Didn't see the point in letting you die. Wasn't right. Most people wouldn't care." "I'm not most people." She nodded, accepting the answer. It was enough. That afternoon he took her outside. The snow was deep, but he showed her how to stack wood, check traps, move without wasting energy. She fumbled at first, her hands clumsy with cold, but he didn't correct her. He watched, nodded, moved on. By evening, her steps were steadier, her breath stronger. She swept the cabin floor, rolled up her sleeves, and felt the ache of work in her muscles. It was a good ache. Calder returned with a sack of jerky, glancing at the swept floor. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "You can stay," he said, voice low. Her heart thudded. "Thank you." Days passed in quiet rhythm. Tala woke early, work without being asked. Sweeping, cooking, mending. Calder checked traps, chopped wood, taught her the land secrets. Where rabbits hid, how to spot fox tracks. They spoke little, but their silence was a language of its own. She hummed sometimes, soft Apache tunes, and he didn't stop her. One night, she sat by the fire, wearing his wool shirt, her dress drying on a peg. The comb he'd carved was finished, pine smoothed to a soft curve. "Is it for me?" she asked. "Yes." "Why?" "Your hair's always in your eyes." She took it, combing through her tangled strands. The shirt slipped, baring her shoulder. She didn't fix it. "You lost someone?" she asked. He didn't turn. "My wife. 5 winters ago." "I lost people too. Not by death, but it feels the same." He looked at her then, really looked, seeing the weight in her words. "Do you miss her?" she asked. "Every day." "I'm not trying to take her place." "I know. I don't want to leave either." "You don't have to." She hesitated, then asked, "Will you sit beside me?" He crossed the room, sat on the cot's edge, hands on his knees. She leaned in, her lips brushing his, tentative. He didn't pull away. When he kissed her back, it was slow, steady, real. She whispered, "I feel safe here." "You are." The snow lightened by the 6th day, the air less bitter. Tala worked outside, splitting kindling, her feet wrapped in Calder's oversized boots. He repaired a trapdoor hinge, his tools meticulous. They moved together without needing to speak, their tasks a shared rhythm. Hooves broke the quiet. Calder grabbed his rifle, motioning Tala inside. 3 men rode up, one with a red scarf. "We're with Salt Creek's watch," he said. "Heard you're hiding an Apache girl." "I live alone," Calder said, rifle low but ready. The man smirked. "We'll see about that." Calder didn't budge. "You're on my land. Leave." The men rode off, but their words lingered. Tala stepped out. "They'll come back." "I know. Do you want me to leave?" "No." That night, they sat close by the fire, shoulders touching. "You lied for me," she said. "Didn't lie," he replied. "I live alone." "Not anymore." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm yours now." He nodded. "And I'm yours." Weeks passed. The snow began to melt, and the land stirred with life. Tala and Calder worked side by side, planting seeds, building a corral. She wore his shirt, her dress mended but rarely worn. The cradle he'd carved sat by the cot, a quiet promise. Tala was late. 3 weeks. "I figured," Calder said, his hands gentle on her waist. "I want you here. The child, too." They sat outside that evening, her head on his shoulder. "No one's come back," she said. "Maybe they see what we know," he replied. "You belong to yourself. We just chose each other." Spring brought warmth, birds, hope. The cabin was no longer a shelter, but a home. They'd built it together, task by task, trust by trust. Threats might return, but Tala and Calder faced them as one. No longer strangers, no longer broken. Just 2 souls who'd found each other when the world offered nothing else.